Barbara of Portugal, a powerful influence. Barbara of Portugal was born on the 4th of December, 1711. She was the eldest child of King John V of Portugal and Archduchess Maria Anna of Austria. Her name was influenced by Saint Barbara, the saint of her birthday, and Barbara was presumed to take the Portuguese throne, but then her mother birthed a son, leaving her without her own throne. Her parents were desperate for a child and an heir to their throne, but after the marriage of King John V of Portugal and Archduchess Maria Anna of Austria, they struggled to conceive for nearly 3 years. Finally, a daughter was born, Maria Magdalena, Barbara, Xavier, Leonor, Teresa, Antonia, Josepha, honouring a number of saints and relatives. Her father built a new great convent called Convent of Mafra as a sign of his gratefulness. Barbara was baptized and fashioned Princess of Brazil as a presumed heir to the Portuguese throne. She was typically referred to as Barbara or Maria Barbara, a name never used before among Portuguese royalty. To the surprise of her parents, they gave birth to a son, Pedro, only 2 years later, and so she was no longer heir presumptive. Pedro was a new heir, but he devastatingly died at the young age of 2. Within this time, her mother had given birth to a second son, Joseph, so Barbara never regained heir presumptive again. As a child, Barbara was given an amazing education. She spoke multiple languages and was an avid reader on many varied subjects. She took a particularly great liking to music, and she became an immensely talented keyboard player. She was taught from the age of 9 by Domenico Scarlatti, who was a great harpsichordist and composer. He taught her right up to his death in 1757, a year before her own death. In 1725, when King Louis XV of France was looking for a bride, Barbara was on the shortlist to becoming his wife. The original list of 99 potential brides was reduced to the 17 that Barbara was in the running for. But due to her young age and mental health weaknesses of her family, she was eventually removed from the list. In 1729, at the age of 18, Barbara was married to the future Ferdinand, VI of Spain, who was only 16 at the time. A double marriage was arranged to exchange princesses. Her brother Joseph then married her new husband's half-sister, the Spanish Infanta Mariana Victoria. Mariana had been dropped as the bride for Louis XV when he was in desperate need for an heir, and she was too young to accommodate. The princess exchange and subsequent marriages were done to repair the Portuguese and Spanish political relationship. The relationship with her newly arranged husband was allowed to deepen in private when they were kept under house arrest in their apartment for 4 years from 1733. The prince and princess were kept away from the public and spied on by Queen Elizabeth's supporters due to becoming targets of the opposition known as the Spanish Party, alongside Spain's deteriorating relations with Portugal. Ferdinand suffered from ill health, and their forced isolation allowed Barbara to nurture a significant influence over her husband. Unfortunately, they did not have any surviving children, and Ferdinand suffered from ill health. Ferdinand loved Barbara deeply and became increasingly attached to her despite her not being considered beautiful by the contemporaries. They had a love of music in common, and he became dependent on her advice and support. When Ferdinand ascended to the Spanish throne as Ferdinand VI, the French ambassador stated that it is rather Barbara who succeeds Elisabeth, Ferdinand's stepmother, rather than Ferdinand succeeding Philippe. From this day forward, her sole aspiration was to encourage a good relationship between Spain and Portugal, and so she remained in close contact with her father. Ferdinand's powerful stepmother, Elisabeth Farnese, kept the king and queen in waiting firmly in the background, so not to be cast aside. Ferdinand's father, Philip, had long been miserable and had left the government to his wife. Ferdinand looked after his stepmother and continued to treat her kindly. She was moved into a rented mansion with the two of her children, but by 1747 she was openly criticising the new regime and attempted to drive a political wedge between her and Ferdinand, alongside her other supporters. She formed an alliance with 3 members of the Spanish party who had been in opposition during the previous regime. This frustrated Barbara, so Elizabeth was exiled to La Granja for 12 years, where she built her own palace. She tried to gain back support from the court and succeeded in winning over some support, but she was still kept far away from the court. Her health began to suffer, and she became gradually more blind and lame. Despite their differences, Barbara married Elizabeth's daughter, Maria Antonia, to the future Victor Amadis III of Sardinia in 1750. Barbara's influence over the king meant that the ministers showed her all of the important papers because she knew what she should and shouldn't tell the king, and she participated regularly in affairs of the state. She became a channel through to the king, and she helped the ministers achieve the desired result from the king. Barbara was able to sway the king with great power, but much less difficulty than ever the Doge did the late king, his father. During her husband's reign, Barbara supervised glorious grand parties and concerts at her favourite retreat, the royal palace of Aranjuez. But unlike her predecessor, Queen Elizabeth, Barbara did not enjoy flaunting her wealth and influence over her spouse and the government policy. The couple tried to produce heirs to the throne, but unfortunately none of the children survived, and one son was born stillborn in 1733. Barbara became obese and continued to suffer from severe asthma that had took over most of her life. Her husband was heartbroken and fell into deep mourning when she died at the royal palace of Aranjuez, on the outskirts of Madrid, on the 27th of August 1758. She was buried in the convent of the Salas Reals. Ferdinand followed her in death only a year later, on the 10th of August 1759.
Please comment, like and subscribe if you wish for more stories, and leave your suggestions below and I will endeavour to cover them.